Welcome back to the Planting Seeds podcast. Today, we have a heartfelt kōrero with Connor Watene-O'Sullivan, who is from the far north and grew up in Te Ao Māori. Ironically, he went to Te Kura kaupapa Māori o Te Rangi a Niwa, where the podcast was actually recorded at the Hui Tāne wānanga that happened earlier this year. Connor is part of Circle of Brothers, a kaupapa that he created alongside his school bros where they could support each other, and now that is open to other tāne on their wellness journeys. We talk about vulnerability, healing connections between our pāpās, maturing within our relationships, as well as the importance of physical well-being in our overall hauora. This one's real, this one's raw, and no doubt there's going to be gems in there for you. I hope you enjoy. We're just going to get straight into it, bro. I've been listening to your kōrero today and being on the panel, and you're very much so on a similar huarahi to myself and many other young Māori pāpā partners who are looking at being better on, I would go as far as to say on a daily basis, and if there's room to grow, there is a willingness to step into that space. And hearing your way of articulating yourself and having that self-awareness, and even just your experience of growing up here within this kura, Te Rangi a Niwa, Te Aho Matua, having your reo, having all of the tikanga that comes with that kind of upbringing, and just seeing where you're at now, bro. It's really great to have others who share similar interest, but also this, I think kare tuatu i te mahi pāpā me te mahi whānau, but there's also this part around what helps us to do that as individuals as well. So kia koe, brother Connor, no mai ki te Planting Seeds podcast. First and foremost, bro, how are you doing, bro? Pēhea ana.
Yeah, ora pai ana, my bro. Whana tonu ana, still kicking koe rā te mea nui. And nōku te honore kia tai mai ki tēnei taumata kōrero. Beautiful, love listening to the multitude of, people, talent, whakaro that come through this space. So keen to tāpiri, ki tēnei whāriki kōrero, my bro, with you. And obviously the purpose of our meeting here today is as part of the Waira Hui Tāne that's happening at our kura up here, Te Rangi a Niwa, within our rohe of Te Hiku o Te Ika, which I know you've been here before because we just reflected on, the first time we met. And so kārawe tēnei hononga no, my bro, tāua kia tāua.
Oh, tēnā koe, my bro. And, you're passionate about similar things, especially around, tāne. You've got a kaupapa called Circle of Brothers. And I guess before we get to that, there has to be a story as to why it even started, or the genesis, or the orokohanga of something like that. There's a process that we go through that shakes us or wakes us up to something. And what was that for you in terms of a turning point or a hinatore, let's say?
Two angles to that, bro. One goes right back to my own individual sort of life and upbringing, and I spoke a little bit about that today. My old man, very influential in my life, a Māori doctor, a general practitioner who sort of broke that chain and that cycle of intergenerational sort of disconnect from his Māoritanga, who he was. He grew up in quite an urban setting as a Māori, disconnected from his whakapapa and his reo, which he didn't have handed down from his own father, and had to piece together, an identity, for himself. And so I'm lucky to have, been, I guess, the product of what was second generation of breaking the cycle. We talk about that a lot as Māori, how do we break this cycle of trauma, of, whether it's addiction or loss of reo and tikanga and identity. And I'm lucky that I had a father who did that for me and paved the pathway for me. But I've always really drawn, from his compassion, and my mother's as well, who were both dedicated to, Māori health as doctors and nurses. And, but specifically my father who growing up, has dedicated a lot of his life to bettering, the lives of our people, and he's always been passionate about that. One thing for him is not just being a doctor, but a Māori doctor helping his people. And I guess my sort of passion for not wasting that kind of investment he put into me, and especially when it comes to Tāne Ora, the take of our hui this week, and the main take of Circle of Brothers, the COBs. I remember going to, hui similar to this, not on this big of a scale, many years ago. Over 15 years ago, as a young boy going into spaces like got up here, they had One Heart, Many Lives, which a few of the old boys walking around here today, many from back then have sort of passed on, but it was, a very, my early experience of Tāne getting together, exploring and searching for ways that they can navigate their health. Back then, probably more in a physical sense, It was about addressing the heart conditions, the diabetes, all of this, whereas we've progressed a bit further from then, and noticing now that actually a solution to that physical well-being is also located in emotional well-being. And so that's a personal long-term experience of how I've become passionate about men's health, but Tāne Ora. But in terms of Circle of Brothers, bro, I te mata I konei, I te kura, what was once just a brotherhood, a friends group, a paratatanga between us and the bros that grew up here. We wanted to carry that on and beyond kura, beyond the identity of being from niwa, ni what was what's next in our lives as we sort of all disseminate out into the world, and spread out and try and find jobs or find careers or find purpose. The Circle of Brothers has truly been an anchor to our brotherhood, that now we're building on to include more brothers, not just the ones we grew up with in at school, but anyone who needs help or is just looking for that positive setting to be in.
Wow. And no doubt because of that journey, there has been like more openness and people sharing, that desire, or perhaps it's even like what I'm getting at, or what I'm thinking right now in this moment is like when I'm thinking about your journey, there are others who have like a similar shared experience of wanting to feel like a part of something, or having these senses of struggles and not really knowing how to express or being accepted in certain spaces. And so having like a kaupapa like Circle of Brothers, there's an openness for people who have similar journeys or have a specific need that everyone can either relate to or has, certainly a resonance to. And so with that in mind, what are some of the struggles that you're seeing for our tāne, or more specifically perhaps around like within Circle of Brothers? What are some of those things that are coming up?
Yeah, look, I think what I was just talking about before, my grandfather, my father, what they had to try, the cycles he had to try and break. Some of our bros coming through are doing that for their own whānau, didn't grow up with that sort of, even though grew up within the far north, a pretty Māori place, we're one of the, I guess, kaitiaki or te tiriti o Waitangi up here, and, there is a staunchness about being Māori in the far north, but that doesn't always translate into being quite connected or brought up within that reo tikanga, which, as I said, were the foundation and gems that created the Circle of Brothers, the strong bond, the strong identity that we have. And so it's been interesting to see, and that's why I say I'm privileged in that, we went to kura, to niwa, te rangi a niwa here, and learnt that in an early age, whereas for some of our bros who are our age, but, grew up here, but went to the local mainstream school or whatever, was sort of denied that. And I feel that they're drawing inspiration, from us being and standing as proud, young Māori men proud of our culture, which has recently, I feel, just become quite a, what do you call it, a pop culture, within Aotearoa trend, and that is not at all to whakaiti the trend that it is.
No way.
But it is to recognise the differences of when we were growing up, sort of looked at as, yous are the Māori speakers and the kapahaka kids, within a landscape that was like, mangu pai, te iwi o konei, most people here are Māori, but we were sort of seen as that, I guess, bastion or identity of what Māori looked like, and now it's celebrated. We're sharing that through the Circle of Brothers. tū atu i tērā, bro, obviously the addictions, we're talking about the navigating masculinity in there before, and, the emotional struggles. These are things actually that even to us, some of the ones who stand strong in our Māori identity are still navigating ourselves, but we're doing it together in the circle.
There's a memory that comes up, and it's a memory that and it's a conversation that I've had with my pāpā. And as I went on my own healing journey, as I sort of started being open to this process of change and growing, and I didn't realize what that would open up for myself. When you want to grow, you really have to make changes, and to make changes you have to first identify what you need to change. And so for me, that opened up this Pandora box of like, holy hell, all of these memories started to flood in. And a lot of my, I guess, breakthroughs, my pāpā has been pretty much at the center of it in many ways, whether that's my relationship to it, but it's more so about my interpretation as a young person and what I felt I needed, but I didn't know how to communicate, but it's what I was interpreting at that time. And what I'm getting to is that part. It's the interpretation. Not only did I not involve my pāpā in my journey because I knew it was my journey, but I got to understand him through my own, meaning, he was like that because of such and such. And learning more about his own haerenga and the cycles that he broke, I was so grateful that I was experiencing what I was experiencing of him, because he stopped a whole lot of things. Although I received a bit of residue, there was so much that he did. And this wrapped around, like more recently, just last year I had a wānanga, and it was the first ever time that I went home and I had a kōrero with my pāpā about my journey, and I'd been on it for almost like 6 years by this time. And it wasn't to go to him and be like, pāpā, like these are all the things that, have come up for me. And I wasn't pointing at him with a sense of blame, but it was actually having a kōrero with him with this lens of gratitude, saying thank you for being the pāpā that you have been, because it helped me to be this pāpā and man that I am now. And so that in itself was healing. And so when I think about, just breaking these cycles, sometimes when we go through things, we're so caught up in what we're going through that we fail to see reasons as to why it's happened. And when we see why it's happened, what it opens up, certainly for me, is this feeling of compassion and empathy for what those, our pāpā, our parents have had to go through in order for us to experience what we're experiencing. Because if he knew better, I'm sure he would have done better. Or there might have been just too much that he hasn't been able to process. And so thinking about, that for you, what do you feel, or what's an experience that, can relate to that? Because that's been my healing journey, and wholly it's been that moment with my pāpā, the conversations of hearing about his journey, but then having that moment of gratitude for him rather than everything else that I had experienced.
Yeah.
It was mean.
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Oh, bro, like can relate and resonate with that 100%, eh? And, shedding a little bit of, vulnerability in my own sort of journey, bro. Gratitude, gratefulness can sometimes also come down to as well forgiveness. For some of those, what you may have interpreted as errors or shortcomings or things you hold against your old man, but then actually kind of look back and go, and especially as a young pāpā, you'd know this, going now and what it's like to have kids in tamariki, and I'm always envisioning, bro, like, oh, this is what my old man was probably feeling like,
at times,
probably even harder because he was that one step back, further trying to make sense of it all. He didn't have a dad. He pieced together what he knew from grabbing, things out there and his experience as a young man from his uncles, from his, dads, friends' dads and stuff like that, to try and piece together what he thought a dad could be for his sons that was better than what he had. And me and my dad being very similar, and it's been sort of a journey for us both. I've always had quite this sense of expectation from my old man, because I've always been reminded, and sometimes he does remind me of how hard it was for him, what he did to sort of create a better future for his kids, and that's always kind of in ways sort of put a bit of pressure on me, to live up to that standard And so our relationship has sometimes been fraught. You know, I've been critical of him. He's probably been critical of me. But yeah, just recently, like in the past 2 years, bro, come to sort of that gratitude, that forgiveness and sort of just acceptance of like, oh, you know, not like just remembering you did break that cycle. There is a reason why you're not necessarily always 100% in my eyes. Like he is, but you know what I mean? Like it's all good, Dad. You are who you are. Some of the you know, things that you've done, and look, one of those was, you know, a separation between him and my mum. You know, he sort of left my mum, and we had 7 kids, or 6 brothers and sisters, and that really cut us deep, bro. You know, when we were a whānau, and held that heart out against him. But recently just come to realise you're my old man, you know, you've done the best that you can. It's been awesome for me. It's now sort of my responsibility to ensure, and I said this before in our hui, to be a better version, you know, of my dad, so that my sons can be a better version than me. And that's how it's not breaking the cycle, it's then rebuilding a whole new one.
Yeah, man, and I think that's the great thing about, I guess, being a parent, as you said, is like there's so much more awareness of the challenges that come with being a parent. And so when you're a child, you're just thinking about all of the things that are happening to you without fully understanding like why things have unfolded the way that they have. And every time I think about, you know, the healing, or, you know, going back into the mamai, which is trauma, and that's usually like as soon as we hear trauma, it's like boom, wars are up. But a process that I've shared many times that has helped me in different stages is usually when we go back into these memories or into these experiences, as soon as we start to think about it, we have an emotional response. It's like our nervous system remembers. And so we end up, it's like we go back in time. And it's like we're not like I'm 34 now. I'm not the 34-year-old version of me that's gone back into that memory when I was 12. I actually become a 12-year-old boy. And so it's actually being grounded in where we are, and can we see that memory or that experience as the version that we are now with what we know of life. And that's given me so much more playroom to have a different perspective, because say me and you're looking at this pen there, it's a view of this pen, but you see it differently to me. But when we go back into the trauma, you're only seeing the pen in your view, and I'm only seeing this in my view. But if we go back as to what we know of life now and what we've experienced, we get different angles, which gives us a different relationship. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I've written down forgiveness here. And I think that's the gateway for many of us to release, you know, to let go, is when we can forgive. And we can only do that by reshaping our understanding of these moments in time. And so for you, bro, forgiveness, like how is that being practiced for you, and what does that look like?
Look, bro, as well, it's you know, forgiveness towards other people, you know, who you love. Something I've recently been practicing though is a bit of, you know, forgiveness of self. You know, like forgiving yourself, bro. Like, you know, when you just talk about you know, being triggered by sort of childhood traumas or memories that you know, well up a whole lot of emotions. And look, I'll use an example of sometimes when you know, having a bit of a rough day, and you know, me and my young 4-year-old son are clashing, not in a major way, but in a way where, you know, you kind of are triggered by, actually I've got to remember what it was like. Right now I'm just thinking about this as a father, you know, struggling, having a bit of a hard day, and you know, the kids are being a little bit challenging, and the dynamics at home, but I've been trying to practice, you know, putting myself into what they're feeling like, you know, and what I remember feeling like in that moment. And it gets me every time, you know, and goes, geez, you know, you don't have to do this. Just, you know, you don't have to sort of get a little bit ditty or you know, a bit vocal.
So hard in the moment, though,
so hard, bro.
It's so hard. And so you're like literally talking about my life, you know, like as you say that, and especially having young tamariki, I have moments where I don't pop right off, but there's those things that you don't anticipate will come out, but something happened, and then all of a sudden you get loud, and then all of a sudden you're just dragging, your son to time out, or you just have that breather, but it's just happening, and it's hard to just catch it in the moment,
and breaking the cycles, bro. Like, you do those things because that's probably what happened to you. You kind of got like a drag to the room and told, nope, shut the door, and, kind of, time out, and you sort of put up barriers, with your kids. And I remember that a little bit, from my old man. And so when I get triggered, by the tamariki, sometimes that's what I revert to. But I try to check myself, bro, and this is, as I said, me exposing a little bit of the challenges of papahood, check myself and go, no, you don't need to do that. It's your 4-year-old son, he's having just as hard a time as you're having, and the emotions as a 4-year-old boy. And so step back and just,
that papa guilt's real too, bro?
And that's the forgiveness side of it, bro. Sometimes just forgiving myself and alongside wanting to do better next time, and implement these strategies to prevent that. But ultimately we can beat ourselves up. Sometimes, and I do like, and then the wahine say to each other, we need to stop, yelling at our kids as much, we shouldn't be doing that. And it's a challenge every day, bro.
Every day, because you're so inspired and motivated, and you love your kids so much, and then all of a sudden those moments just come in, and you got to be on all the time to catch them in the moment. And there's things that I do, there was a period there where my young fella was just acting up way more than usual, and I was probably acting up in his reality too, but that was the inclusion of the second child. We had the second baby, and our boy is absolutely beautiful, but that creates such an interesting shift in the whānau, and we're just having this, there was like a 2-week period where we just got so overwhelmed with the managing of 2 kids. All of a sudden it just happened, and there was something there where I just kept taking my boy to time out, and then I just ended up just sitting there with him and just feeling the papa guilt, and I just said, far out, papa needs a time out, son? And he goes, yeah. So I got him to put me in time out, and just being like, bro, come on. And I think that's just that part of accountability, and we're always going to fall over as parents, but if we can really, I guess, get back up. And I think coming back to forgiveness, I think our children are the most forgiving, bro. I could put my son in time out or play up a little bit, and maybe just yell at him or whatever it may be, but he still comes to me, not long after, and he still wants a hug, and he still like forgets about it in moments. So I think they teach us so much in that regard, bro.
Role models to us.
Hard. And so coming back to Circle of Brothers, bro, you you've created this rōpū, you and, your hoa. And what are some of the things that you guys do within that space, bro, in terms of tools or check-ins, and, what does that look like?
So, look, we have a few different spaces that we hold that has just evolved naturally as we've gone through and navigating the space and figuring out what is it that we as tāne need and also want, to work on. Look, starting from sort of one of the more superficial, and I say superficial because it is just I think in terms of, maintaining our integrity as tāne in life, it's more of just a constant and something that helps keep us, balanced, which is around physical activity. So we run this kaupapa called the Warpath. A lot of our, words and titles and our identity is built around this sort of warrior tanga, this toa tanga. And once again, that's drawing from that inspiration of kind of, I guess, embellishing a little bit, of what we were taught through our kōrero tukuiho, and taking the gems from all of that and sort of, going, this is what it means to be a warrior, in the modern age. And so the physical fitness aspect of that is important because this is about, for some of our bros, like myself and within the inner parts of the circle who are going a bit deeper, for other tāne in our community, this is sometimes just a start,
Yeah.
a start of changing and transforming a way different, lifestyle to what we're talking about here. And so we're giving them a positive, distraction activity to engage, because it's an icebreaker to start, it's an icebreaker to come and throw some weights around, to go for a run. And so we do a program like that, but also try and put another layer on that by jumping online throughout our 6 weeks and having group discussions about ngā taha e whā, o te whare hauora. And so we touch on, te taha whānau, tinana, wairua, giving little snapshots and taste tests. It's a delicate balance when working with our tāne, not to try and overload them. We wait until they're ready to step up the best we can do. And I think I went back to Dave Letele's kōrero this morning, is to provide that environment of empowerment that makes them go, I want more of this. I want more of this circle of brothers. I want to, be a cob and move forward. And so the Warpath is one of our platforms. We also hold wānanga. We've had 3 successful wānanga over the past sort of 1.5, 2 years, where we come together, we hold space, we practice vulnerability, we, form up in a circle and go around, and the tears roll, everyone gets to share, bro. And for some of us who have been doing this now for a few years, and take it a bit for granted, for others that come in, it's like, whoa, this is powerful, nothing like they've ever experienced. So we're normalizing that. And then Tuatu I Tera is really, once our bros touch base with either the Warpath program or our wānanga, they become part of the circle of brothers, and we look out for each other, And in a small community like up here, bro, in Te Hiku, that's not as challenging as being it like in the city, or bigger places. We see each other quite a lot around here, because there's only a select number of certain population up here. And so it's a really good, I think, example of how a kaupapa like ours, intimate, but genuine and organic, this has not come from any, funding policy or whatever. This is literally derived out of our own navigation and evolution.
What it looks like.
As tāne.
That's so mean, bro. And I think that's the cool thing. And I'm really about those intimate spaces and those intimate opus. And every kaupapa has its place. And, you have the big impact ones where it's just like, similar to here, you've got like over 100 people here, and you've got power plays and powerful people coming in to share. And then you go, even in the same wānanga, you've got the little intimate ones, and those ones there draw a lot of inspiration and different kind of kōrero. And one of the things that you said within that, bro, was around holding space. What is that to you, bro? Because that's a term that gets used quite a lot, particularly in these healing circles or in these spaces of growth. In your words or in your understanding, what does that mean to you?
I think it's about providing a safe, and trusting sort of environment, and that space might be for a couple of hours, or over the duration of a 1 or 2 day wānanga, where you can create this sense of security and confidence within the individuals, the bros that rock up, to be almost and share their insecurities, with each other, and people, honesty session, vulnerability sharing, whatever it is. And I have to admit, bro, that big ups to, there's, I guess, a kaupapa that came up here a few years ago, Amend, which is now, evolved into, or some of them, the bros there, offshoot of that was Kaitiaki. Anyway, there are a couple of local bros here, Kurt Lambert, who's here, and Hui Tāne Updates, who first sort of like opened up some of these spaces at Waimanoni Marae. And they were just really powerful, bro. Like, as I said, sort of letting everything go, and actually practicing something that as tāne we protect ourselves from, being honest, and, just stripping off a few layers. So, holding space to me it's about, just creating that trustful safe environment, that safe sort of circle, to let it all out. And for some bros, it's a healing process just to let it out. For others, it kind of gives perspective about, I feel like that too, or I can really relate to that. And it just helps us to make more sense of things, I think.
There's a term that goes, hurt people. And I think within these spaces, whether it's like holding space or, you know, in those kinds of circles, and you're seeing someone like release, there's another flip to that, and it goes healed people heal people, you know. And I think that's the medicine there. That's the medicine, is like you might not have the practice in being able to release in that way, but when you see someone do it, that's automatic permission, That's automatic permission to be like, oh, far out, we can do that. And we all got something that perhaps needs to just be released, where we can just relax a little bit more and take out some of that weight that is on the shoulders. And another thing that my tuakana says in Te Whare Ai, or the Barungarino,
yes.
Instead of saying holding space, we use the term holding the frequency. And so holding space is, you know, like as Pou or as facilitators, we're holding the space, but as facilitators, we also hold the frequency. So it becomes something that people automatically tune into, if that's the ahu, or if that's the intention. And I'm going to double back up to this kōrero here, bro, around addictions as tāne. And, you know, we're talking around like alcohol or drugs or food even, or, you know, it could even be sex, or it could be even training in some instances. But one of the things that I've learned from another doctor by the name of Joe Dispenza is sometimes you can, or more often than not, we don't even realize that we're addicted to a certain aspect of ourselves. And so when I say that, it's like an addiction is when you do something that you know you shouldn't be doing, but you continue to do it. There could be a way of like saying it. But what if you say you don't like this part of you, but you still act out in that way? There's an addiction to that behavior. There's an addiction to that aspect of who you are as a person. And so what we're really doing, and this is another term from him, is instead of breaking an addiction, we're sometimes, or in this space anyway, we're breaking the habit of being ourselves. And so there's evolution, or there's this change, and in order for us to do that, we have to identify it and then shift into whatever that next stage is. And so thinking about it in that way, bro, like, is there any further whakaaro on that, or like, can you see that unfolding, whether it's in you or even in just people within your life?
100%, bro. I mean, look, most times when you listed a different range of things that we can, you know, be addicted to. And most times, you know, addiction, it triggers the idea of substance, you know, abuse. And, you know, just focusing on that for a little bit, I think that's something that's just quite noticeable, you know, notable, self-noted as well among our tāne, you know, taru kino, alcohol, sometimes even harder stuff, you know, and I'll be straight up, bro, like even for myself, you know, I kind of pride myself in being a health advocate, but I've had a history of addiction as well, you know, to marijuana, and a lot of the time, and I've recently, within the past sort of half a year, fully transformed and you know, put that aside, and using this as an example, and I'm open about it as well, it sets in when you know that you're trying to justify that it is all good, you know, that it's actually like not harming you and, you know, not harming your life. And I had to really step back and kind of go, what am I doing? What are the sorts of kaupapa, you know, I'm pushing and advocating for, whilst I, you know, said to myself, this is manageable and, you know, I'm still holding front and face for what I'm doing. Ultimately, it was that justification, bro, that like I was doing all good when actually I could be better.
That's the thing, sometimes you're not doing bad either, but it's also that feeling of, man, I could be doing better.
100%, bro. And so look, that's just, you know, touching on it. I think everyone struggles with certain forms of addictions,
for sure.
And I was sort of alluding to that in the kōrero about masculinity before that. Sometimes we, as tāne as well, we can be addicted to being masculine or trying to serve these ideas of what is fulfilling our masculinity, whether that's kind of going, oh no, I'm training, you know, 3 days a week because I need a release, and I'm playing footy on the weekend, and then I want to go for a fish or a dive to, you know, get some kai, and whilst those are all good activities, they're positive, I think sometimes it can be a little bit warped within our sense of what's actually a priority for our whānau. And we become addicted to that, to justifying once again that like, nah, this is good, to the point where we can, even have an argument with our missus to be like, just to go out, and really to be with the boys even more, to, have a good time. And so I've tried to just even counter my own addictive nature towards the things that I love, once, not just substances, but activities that make me feel fulfilled as a tāne.
Yeah, and that's pretty much, I can see that there is a shift happening within that. Is, we all have interest, and I think there is more dominance within tāne to, go out and do what they want to do. And I definitely have that too. Is, man, I got this kaupapa on, and, I'll go and, things shuffle around, those needs. Or, it could be even as simple as, even at home, it's, I got to go train, so I'll go train. And even if my wahine does, she'll do it with the baby, because I got to go mahi. And so there's all of these things that happen within everyday life where us as men, we really just go out and do what we want to do, essentially. And I think there's more space for us just to be more flexible within how we go about doing things, because when we think about the wahine, holy, they do it with so much grace. Even with a bit of riri, they'll still, do it. And so I think that's a really good point, and where I feel like I need to learn more, and I've done a whole lot better throughout, I guess, my relationship with my wahine, going on 8 years from where I was, to where we are now. And I actually, more recently, me and my wahine have been sort of speaking about, and I've been initiating the kōrero, just around like apologizing to her for those earlier stages in our relationship, because I started, when we first got together, I was just full committed to this journey of growth. And because of that, I was looking at all of my deficiencies and all of my hara, and I was addressing those things. And so in that kind of state, there was a lot of me pushing that onto my wahine and being like, oh, you should work on this, or what about looking at this? And so there was how I was thinking about things, there was a push for her to think the same way or do the same things. And that created a lot of challenges in the earlier stages of our relationship, because in my mind, I'm thinking, man, this is going to be good for the both of us. But if I was being really pono with that, it was actually, if you did this too, then, man, maybe my life would be better. That's a real, deeper truth to the reasons as to why that was. And it actually created the opposite. It created a lot of insecurity for my wahine, because now I'm saying, you should do these so then things can be better, which is, in a way, saying you're not enough as you are. Which is not what I was intending, but that's how it was being received and how it came across, bro. And so there's been a lot of development, I guess, within our relationship, and me actually learning so much through her, and just having these moments now where we could reflect and see these things and have a chance just to not rectify, but just have better understanding of how we can be in partnership together. And so, I'm sure you've had like some experiences within your relationship, and what are the things that you draw on from your wahine, bro, and like perhaps what are the things that she's showing you or you've learned from her?
First of all, but I think that, your sort of tool of being able to apologize even for things that happened, a while back, and having that sort of, just forgiveness, or sort of, acknowledgement of maybe some of the things that were wrong earlier on in our relationships. We were trying to navigate things, when we're just trying to know each other and understand each other as wahine and tāne, and sort of what we want moving forward. And we never really know when we're going to have our first baby, our second baby as such. These things just happen as part of the relationship moving forward. But look, I mean, my wahine has been, it's so true, bro, about that idea of the other half. You sort of think that as a tāne you can survive on your own and be this kind of dominant, staunch sort of fella, but actually at the end of the day, we wouldn't make it through half the things we go through without our wahine. And of experiencing that more and more, you know, as our relationship is maturing. And going back to before, you know, that idea of getting some validation for our own, you know, sense of being a man by wanting to go out and do things. Initially, early on in our relationship, I sort of looked at that as not being able to go out and dive as much, or, you know, play footy as much as I'm being held back, you know, or like she's taking something away from me that's important for me. But I've tried to now recently sort of I flip that and see it as actually, oh no, she's not taking anything away from me. I can view it as I'm just giving something more to her and the kids, you know. And I like it, bro, a little bit, you know, the more sort of nappies I change, or I enjoy sort of saying, oh no, babe, all good, you go off and play netball, you know, I really support that, or go to your kaupapa or whatever, because I know it's a bit of a tautoko mai, tautoko atu, you know, whereas before I was kind of, and I had to check myself, you know, a couple of years deep into our relationship and with babies, like, actually, this does sort of seem a little bit unbalanced. And I don't think that's, once again, I only just sort of developed that perspective. It's probably a perspective not many tāne out there I have. I look at some of my bros and I'm like, oh bro, your wahine must have a bit of a hard time, you know, keeping up with you. That's not putting any of the bros down. It's sort of just obviously, you know, we're all navigating and finding these balances on our own, in our own context. But I've come to really try to be as giving, you know, back to the wahine as whānau as I can, while still recognising every now and then need to look after myself. But the bigger picture is the whānau, the team, with you and your wahine, not just yourself trying to be the carrier.
I think what you say here is around like a relationship maturing. I think, you know, I had Phil Paiki on here and, you know, Hone Harawira, and they've been with their wives 50, 40 odd years, and, you know, you're talking about a mature relationship in that way. And the way that they talk about their wives is really inspiring. And I aspire for that, because that's just like really beautiful to still have that kind of love and that admiration, you know, for your partner, even that far down. And the one thing that I think, and this might not resonate with some tāne, but I think it takes a long time for us as men to mature, particularly in relationships, you know, because we have so much ego in those earlier stages of our life, you know, and we are very much so self-centered and, you know, worrying about what we're up to. And it takes a little while for us to, you know, make a few hiccups, make a few, I guess, wrong turns, where we sort of like realize that, holy, either this wahine has left me, or you're still making mistakes and this wahine is still there. And then you realize, like, holy hell, maybe I need to change up how I'm doing, because I value this so much and I'm willing to change me because of this. And that's what my, I guess, journey within relationships and better understanding myself, because my whole journey started off the back of failed relationships. And now that I have a relationship that I truly value and that I love, it's helped me sort of be more mature within myself and for us. And going back to, I guess, what I was talking about around like how I was encouraging growth is how I would say. But what I knew about growth is that you learn through challenges. And sometimes in that stage of our relationship, I would almost like control certain things to be like, oh no, we'll do this so you don't make that mistake, or how about doing this so this doesn't happen. So in a way, I'm trying to encourage growth, but I'm also preventing it because I'm preventing the challenges from happening, or her own unique experiences going on in life. And so that's been like a real wake-up call for me, that if this is my kaupapa, we're all on individual journeys, but it's also about just being able to meet and understand each other, you know, as much as we can.
Oh, bro, hard out. I think picking up on that, you know, for us as men, we tend to, and it's been plastered all over this hui wānanga peers, you know, learning from our failures. Like, we're quite good at that, and when I mean good at that, like having to sort of fail first. I think it's it's a hard thing to sort of avoid, you know, and that's a common theme that's popped up within our circle of brothers spaces, you know, is the failures that we've all had. And when we're talking about holding space, holding that frequency, it's kind of about being honest about that, and not normalizing it in a way that makes it sound like okay and all good, but sort of just accepting it, you know, for what it is. I mean, how many times have I over the past, you know, my relationship, when you talk about Whahilda and Papa Hone, Matua Phil and his wife, those are very, very mature. You know, they're not even relationships, those are unions. You know, you look at the one and you see the other automatically, you know, that's how sort of tight and, as you said, mature those are. And so when I think about me and my own wahine, we're still very early, you know, in that stage. But getting stronger by the day, you know, by the year, by the child, I think that's the main important thing. But it hasn't come without, you know, and I'll probably say more my failures than hers. And that's acknowledging that taha wahine, that they are the ringamanaki, you know, and the softer edge, you know, to many of us, the feminine side that balances, you know, a lot of the, I'll admit, kind of, you know, what do you call it, gaps, or just, I'll be straight up, weaknesses that we have as men, like being honest, bro. Like there's elements of myself where I'm like, that's just, you know, weak, and I'm okay to say that, because it's about just recognizing that, once again, we're not all strong and that staunch, and, you know, that the ego,
but having someone there to
that,
make you strong,
completes us.
That's beautiful, you know. And, you know, I think about, you know, me and Hinepani have been married for, you know, 5 years this year, bro. And it was quite an interesting story, because when we got married, that was just another taumata of commitment. And so what that meant was, I can be all of me, you know, not this honeymoon version of me, you know. And so when you are in that stage of like commitment and relationship, you're seeing a whole other side. Your relationship grows, and it's always going to grow. But that was like a interesting step within our whole, I guess, journey, was, you know, we're in this together now. We've, you know, really committed ourselves to one another. And I think as Tāne, for me, I'll just speak about myself. I had mixed views about, you know, marriage, and I had all of these different fears. They were fears more than anything. And for wahine, from what I've learned and from what I know of, like, my wife, is that just means safety. And that's how I see all feminine or all wahine. They just want the element of a wahine is safe. Wow, you know, they can give you so much. They can give you what you feel you need as a Tāne. And that's what that represented for her. And I went on my huarahi, bro, done my rangahau, talked to people that I looked up to, and what I actually realized is that I actually wasn't afraid of being married. I was afraid of failing and not being ready for that, because I was living at home with my parents still. Didn't know what the hell I was doing for mahi, and I was just figuring things out. And so there was a worthiness thing that I had. But as soon as that shifted, it just changed my whole āhua around what's really important here. Do I love her? You know, will I be here for her? And it was just an easy yes. And so that became like my wānanga of taking that step. But as I said, once the commitment happened, everything else sort of like came on top of it. And as you're saying, my weaknesses were seen. There were parts of me that were being exposed. She was also going through her things, but when you're still together and you know, like, shit, it's us. Someone's got your back, like, more than you sometimes. And it's just having that kind of, I guess, union that I feel gives us a bit more. Well, for myself, it just gives me a lot more meaning, and thinking about a why, you know, comes back to that and heke ihokia, ki ngā tamariki. And so we've had this beautiful kōrero, brother, and, you know, very much so centered around, you know, brotherhood and ourselves as Tāne, as, you know, we're not fixed men, you know, sitting here. We are very much so open and going through these journeys of ups and downs, and we've worked through plenty of downs, and you know, there's been some heights, and that's the journey that I feel is important for us in these roles, particularly as supporting others, is like we have to be authentic in that support by being open and vulnerable, which is what, you've displayed within this kōrero, bro. So, kia koe nei, why is it important for us as tāne to have spaces like this, but also to have the sense of brotherhood?
Look, bro, just finishing off with some real honest kōrero, I'm actually quite, sort of in a way afraid or nervous about how my boys are going to grow up, how my future tamariki are going to grow up, the world that, they're going to inherit. Both of us grew up without the platforms like social media we have today, which is a huge influence on the minds of everyone. And even we've gone through, struggles and mental and emotional sort of navigations as we've sort of come into our mature sort of selves. And I guess it's just highlighting, the world is becoming more complex. I talked about my grandfather and my father growing up. I think materialistically, life was harder, and life was kind of a bit more. It was harder, but it was also a bit simpler. A bit more straightforward. These days, materialistically, our lives are becoming a bit more convenient and easy, but they're complex. The things we have to just comprehend and consider today, it goes beyond the walls of our whare, the boundaries of Te Hiku, our small communities. We're influenced so much by the rest of the world and the drama that's out there. And so in a way, whilst I'm confident in how I am being as a father and what I have control over, I'm a little bit nervous for how our next generation is going to grow up. And I look at my sons every day, and I sort of just I pray I'm working to ensure that they are just as resilient as they can be, bro. And this hui spaces like this, Hui Tāne, is about filling our kete as individuals, so we can come together as communities, so that we can, wrap around as much as we can and control what we can that's directly in front of our children. Because I think we're having these conversations now, bro, exploring this area. Even though we might come up with solutions now that makes it better for them on these particular topics, they're going to have other challenges to navigate, and they could be harder. So I think it's just about
as long as they're unique, brother, all good.
Yeah.
Meaning it's not the stuff that we failed to go through, eh? Yeah. Like, go through your problems, but let them be unique, to you, eh?
Hard. And let them explore their own sort of, and navigate, those spaces, when they come to it, just as long as we've given them the tools, and wrap that kura around them. So, that's probably, in reflection, my bro, why we need more circle of brothers around the country, and not just the COBs, circles of tāne, like-minded, getting together, whether it's big hui tāne like this, whether it's small group like ours, whether it's more platforms like this, planting seeds. Mihi ana.
Tēnā koe, brother. Is there anything else that perhaps is on your mind or on your heart that you would like this space to kōrero on, bro? Because I've been directing our kōrero, but is there something for you that you feel like would be good for you just to share, whether it's for people listening or even just for yourself to speak into?
Yeah, that's having a bit of a search around. I guess, look, I started off by talking about my old man, and so I'll finish on that, as the main sort of person who's really inspired me, and showcased to me a genuine example of the love of a father and son, the love between a man and a woman, in a good way, the role that, we all play in our own way to lead our people into a better, brighter future. Look, I'm quite a critical thinker, bro. I like thinking about complex systems. There's heaps I could really talk to on that as a closing remark, but I think ultimately, I'm just really proud to be here doing my bit, bro. For our people, that's something that I've, inherited and always used this term, our people, like talking about us as the collective of Te Iwi Māori, of Aotearoa, once again in the world that's unfolding, in front of us. I think that unity is critical. And once again, that bring us back to circle of brothers. We're not on our own, we're in this together. And so, yeah, koe nā, bro.
Choice, brother. It's been a delicious kōrero, bro. It's been like a meke, cup-filling conversation. And just from where I'm sitting, bro, I think just vulnerability is just so beautiful. And there's some things that I've shared today that I was able to unpack. And that was just because of the nature of our kōrero, but also just the korowai of this wānanga just allows for this kind of fluidity and conversation in kōrero, bro. So just want to mihi to you just for being, my dance partner in this kōrero, in this wānanga tāua, and no doubt you're doing some amazing mahi out there, but more importantly the mahi that you're doing with your sons and with your whānau. And so I runga I tērā, bro, me mihi nui ana ki a koe, and no doubt we'll connect again in future. But for now, bro, ka waiho tēnei kōrero I konei kia koutou, e mātaki ana, e whakarongo mai ana, tēnā koutou, and see you in the next one.
Aroha nui.
Che, aroha nui, bara.
Che, brother.